Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Kate Seddon from Kate Seddon Landscape Design. Kate runs a landscape design company based in Melbourne. And it was great hearing how she started off in the business because similar to Renata Fairhall, she didn't start her working career in the landscaping industry. So she started out working in advertising and marketing and then ended up changing over. And it was great hearing the flexibility that landscape design offered her so that when she did start, she was able to work part-time so she could look after her young kids as well. So there's a lot of people who are thinking of career changes and they've got young kids that I've spoken to. So it's great to hear someone who's able to do that and be as successful as what Kate is, and also hearing how she has that flexibility for her staff as well. So it was great to see a different side of things, and you don't just have to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's also had a couple of the gardens that she's designed be part of the Open Gardens scheme. So it was awesome to hear the reasons why, the benefits of doing that, and how much she enjoys doing it as well. So plenty of tips and good stories in this chat with Kate. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Kate Seddon. Kate, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
Oh, Joel, thanks for having me along. I had a start actually quite similar, I think, to a few people, much like Renata and other people in the industry. I had a whole other career before I started in landscape design. I was working in advertising, in account management, which was, the marketing side of advertising, dealing with clients, taking briefs, creating product in the way of advertising. And I had kids and decided that was a very difficult career to pursue on a part-time basis. I did try it after my first child, but then after my second, I just thought this is not something that is family friendly. And I'd always been interested in plants and gardens, but not specifically sure about which direction I wanted to go in, and found I could get into Burnley to do a graduate diploma in horticulture. And from the first day there, I was absolutely hooked. Just walking onto that campus, don't know if you've been there, but it's a very beautiful botanical garden setting. It's like a mini botanic gardens, gorgeous buildings, wonderful, inspiring lecturers. And I just thought, this is my place. And, I thought as I was studying, what am I going to do with this? And I started directing myself towards the more design-related subjects that they had. And after I'd finished the graduate diploma, I went on to do a course with Andrew Laidlaw from the Royal Botanic Gardens. He runs a sort of 1-year overview course of landscape design. And I went to all the planning design workshops and slowly but surely sort of accumulated a whole lot of design knowledge. I come from a design background. My father's an architect. When I left school, I contemplated doing architecture and then thought that's too, you can't follow your father into the same career. So I didn't. But now it's sort of come full circle, which is lovely.
Yeah. So how long ago was it that you started studying at Burnley?
Oh, maybe 20 years ago. Yeah, would have been just over 20 years ago.
Yep. And did you then go and work for someone else, or did you go out on your own straight away?
That's an interesting question. I worked with someone for about 6 weeks who is a very big name in the industry, and it was a wonderful little head start. But I think they wanted more design-wise out of me than I was able to give at that time. And I was only working 2 days a week. It was quite hard to get momentum. And I had come from a very high-profile advertising career, and it was, I suppose, a bit challenging being at the beginning again. And I just feel like we were sort of at cross purposes. So after 6 weeks, we sort of agreed to part. And he suggested I go and, do a few of my own jobs and see how I went, which I did.
So how did you get those jobs to start with?
Initially, it was friends, particularly parents from my kids' school, who said, you've been studying, you should come and design my garden. And I'm like, I'm not ready yet. And eventually I said, okay, I'm ready. And of course, you take on as much as you can handle. And so the first job was very simple, sort of a pathway down the side of the house and a car parking zone and a bit of planting around it. And then it built as I got more confident and more capable and learnt more and absorbed more as well.
And did they teach you anything about how much to charge for designs when you were studying?
I know Andrew Laidlaw used to talk about it in class. It was always one of my bugbears that we really didn't have a very good sense of how to charge for design, how to set an hourly rate, how to determine how much time is required. And of course, early on, you just, working 100 hours to charge 20 hours. So it's a long slog. Luckily, I had a partner who was bringing money into the house, because for a number of years you go, well, this is lovely and I'm really enjoying it, but am I making any money? And I do think, I do a lecture at Burnley once a year, like a guest lecture to the design students, and I talk about starting a business and how I started, and the sort of processes and what you learn along the way, and the things that you take on as you become more and more proficient. And I think a lot of students don't get that understanding. So I'm always saying to young people, come and talk to me. I'm happy to talk to you. These are the things I can give you. But yeah, I think the whole area of charging for your time and giving value to your time is really undersold, and probably not. Maybe it's different now. This is 20 years ago. Maybe it is taught better now. Do you think that?
I can't remember who it was. It would have been a week ago, but I can't remember who I spoke to. But they said that in their design studying, there was a section called Costa Project, but it was only a small section. So it's so they learned a little bit about it, but not enough to what you know. But like you say, no matter what you learn, you're going to learn a lot more through actually doing the thing in real life rather than at school.
Yeah. And everyone's different, and every project's different. Some projects you bowl over very quickly, and others you get bogged down for a long, long time. One of the things that I've found over time is just making it very clear in our proposal what is and what isn't in the proposal. And so when you do have clients coming back with changes, or clients who say that they don't have a budget, and then when you present the finished documentation and get it quoted, and suddenly there's a budget in front of them, that there is then an opportunity to say, well, yes, we're happy to go back to the drawing board, but there is time involved in redesigning, and it's time that needs to be paid for.
Yeah, I reckon that's a difficult thing for a lot of people to ask in the early days, when they're not as confident in themselves, to ask for all these changes that the clients are making.
Yeah,
going to cost money.
Yeah, exactly.
So, did you use your advertising and marketing experience to get work early on, or was it not relevant to what you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was very relevant in the sense of teaching me about clients, about how to deal with clients, about first of all, interpreting a brief from what they say, developing a design and being able to present it appropriately, and then managing the project, cost management, time management, all of that. That was very helpful. I have to say, I haven't used marketing per se in my career. I've been very fortunate in that I've had a few good opportunities early on to get a bit of exposure in magazines, with Open Gardens. John Patrick was very supportive in getting a couple of those opportunities my way. And equally, Andrew Laidlaw has been very supportive in sending briefs my way for a long time when he wasn't doing private landscapes. But yeah, it's been word of mouth initially through friends, and then through PR opportunities, and then over time through architects and designers. And so now probably 60, 70% of our work is actually in conjunction with architects and designers as part of a new build or a renovation.
And did you ever go out actively to, what's the word I'm looking for, pursuing the architects to try and get work with them, or did it just organically happen?
Organically. Yeah. I don't, I wonder how that happens. I'm sure it does happen. But I think at the end of the day, there's so many fabulous designers around, both in landscape and architecture, that most people aren't sort of waiting for the call from another colleague saying, hi, I'm here for you, I want to offer you your services. I think it really is a word of mouth thing. And I think word of mouth is really important. And we're in a very small town. You want to make sure that your reputation precedes you in a good way, not a bad way.
I've heard some marketing people talk about how word of mouth isn't marketing. But I feel like it's the best way to run a business is by aiming to have a good source of work coming from word of mouth, because if you're getting that, you're obviously doing something right.
Yeah, I mean, the best recommendation is a person-to-person recommendation, and of course that's not marketing because it doesn't have a dollar value to it. It doesn't have a placement cost for advertising or any other sort of marketing opportunity. I know things like having a show garden is a marketing opportunity, but it's really a PR opportunity, isn't it? I mean, where do you draw the line between the two? And a show garden lets you not just show your work, but also talk to people. And whether that talking to people elicits an immediate response or whether it's something 4 or 5 years down the track where they come back to you and say, I remember that garden you did in 2023, Joel. It was fantastic. We've been thinking about you since. And, I think that's more powerful. And so I haven't done show gardens, but I've done open gardens a few times. And the reason I like doing open gardens is that they are real, they're growing, they're in place, they're in situ, and you get that opportunity to talk to people. And whether it's talking to people just to give them some information about design or plants or looking at site conditions or understanding how things change over time in a garden, all of that kind of subtle education, I think, is incredibly valuable, and also giving back to the industry in the same way that when you do a show garden, you're giving back because you're giving people the opportunity to come in and view gardens and landscapes.
Yeah, I love the ideas of the open gardens as well because you get to see how things grow as well. So it's like if you've got a maintenance side of your business, you can do that. But if you don't, then that's a good way of going back to the gardens and saying, oh, yeah, that works. That didn't work. I might try this different next time. So you can learn from that as well as other people benefiting from it.
Yeah. And people ask lots of interesting questions. And I just think that role that we have to encourage people to be more educated in their gardens. Plenty of people go out and they go to the garden centre at the weekend and they buy plants and they fail, and then they go back and buy plants again and they fail, and then they come to having a design and they go, oh, that's a lot of money. But you go, no, it's actually money really well spent because it's money that's actually well thought through investment for your property rather than this ongoing kind of wastage.
Yeah, I learned that.
Off on the track.
I learned that even for myself when I did my first, built our first house. It was 2009, so it was the same year that I started the business, and I was doing my own landscaping. And I did a little bit here and did a little bit there, and then ended up having to pull some of out what I'd put in because I changed my mind on the way something else was going to work. So I was just sort of making it up as I go. So then eventually I even did a design for my own place because I needed to have something to work to.
Yes.
And I'm someone who I'd been landscaping for 5 years by then, and I still hadn't worked that out for myself. So you can understand why clients can not realize the value in getting a design done. But explain that to them about that's just having something to work to will actually be a better product and save them money.
So we've got a few rural properties where it's much more about a master plan and about knowing the direction moving forward and then being able to implement it in stages if necessary. And I just think that's so valuable because it's so easy to just say, oh, we've got all this space, let's just plonk the pool there, or let's just plonk the bocce court or the, whatever it is, the pickleball court, that's a new one. And then it doesn't flow and there's no integration, and that whole idea of transitioning out of a house and being given opportunities both to view the garden from inside the house, but also how you move out of the house into the garden and it draws you out. All of those opportunities need to be kind of well resolved from the start and then slowly implemented. But I know at my garden at home, Joel, I will admit, while I did do an initial design about 6 or 7 years ago, we did a renovation of the garden. Over time, as I have things that we rescue from client projects, discarded plants and things, it has become a bit more of I'll just put that in there and see how it goes. And sometimes it's a good experiment also for me to understand the tolerances of that plant. But yeah, the designer's garden is not always necessarily super designed.
Yeah, and never finished as well.
And never finished, exactly.
So when you started out for yourself, were you working a couple of days a week, was it, or a few days a week to start with?
So Joel, I had a toddler and a sort of 3 or 4 year old when I started my business. And the reason I decided not to go back to advertising and to start out on my own was very much that I want to be able to manage my own time. So initially I was doing 1 day a week. And then a friend of mine who's an architect said, why don't you come and work in our office space, we've got a spare desk. You can get away from home and that sort of influence of home where you get distracted by other things. So I started out going there 1 day a week, and then 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week, and then 4 days a week. And then they moved offices and I moved with them into a little separate partition space. And at that stage, I then took on a freelancer, Hamish, who worked with me for 6 or 7 years. And he had a sort of permanent freelance position with me in that he would work initially 1 day a week and then 2 days a week. And then I think we got up to 3 days a week. And then he started pulling back as his own business grew. So that was sort of the start of there being more than just me. And it's probably only been in the last 6 years or so that I have taken on more staff. And but mind you, in the meantime, sorry, back to your original question, I probably have been working 5 days a week for, I don't know, 13, 14 years now.
Yep.
I started the business about 17, 18 years ago, I think it is. In 2006, 17 years ago. So Hamish left. I've had a couple of other people join me for initially freelance, and now I have 4 staff, and they are all, one of them is full-time and the other 3 are 8 or 9 days a fortnight. And so it's a much bigger beast than it was obviously in the early days. And, that's taken a long while to get there. It's not an overnight thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, well, I've only had put my first design employee on this year, and looking to get another one on. But you've got to have that amount of the work consistently coming in. So having the freelance ones can help with that, I imagine. Yeah,
and also because I think for a while Hamish was working with me, I wasn't. If I was working 5 days a week, I was then also just taking school holidays off, because I needed to. So I needed to be there for my kids, which is 14 weeks a year. And it's a bit of a challenge for people if they're working full time for you to be leaving them, just sort of abandoning ship. So it suited me and it suited Hamish at the time for a long while. And then initially the others who came on also had children in primary school, and they were also wanting that flexibility. I always had a philosophy because of how it worked for me initially. I had a philosophy very much that we needed to support people in having full lives outside of work. And so for a long time, that was also about people with young children. And more recently, it's been about whoever's working for me, allowing people to have an 8-day or a 9-day fortnight allows them to have another part of their life. And whatever that is, whether it's a hobby or whether it's spending more time with a partner or kids or your dog or cat. I just think it's a good thing if you can do it, and if it suits them for their own, desire to have a career but also have another life.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of construction companies in North America who do 4-day weeks, but they'll do 10-hour days, so they still do 40 hours a week. Yeah. But they can just condense it, so then you've got a 3-day weekend whenever you want.
Which is great. And I think it makes a huge difference to how people, how they're enjoying their life, but also how they view their job. And the job becomes less of a burden and more of this is working for me. And so it's a give win-win situation as long as it works. And I do recognise the challenges of having small children and having demands and things that come at the last minute. And there's always someone sick or someone's hit their head in the playground or you've got a doctor's appointment
Exactly. Yep. I'm at home at the moment because of school holidays, so I look after my kids on the Mondays and Tuesdays of school holidays.
Right.
And I find you don't realise how difficult it is looking after kids in school holidays until you've got them. Because my wife works kind of part time, but she can't take too many more hours on because she can do that during school times, but then school holidays, one of us will have to take time off for that. So it's one of those things you don't realise it until you're involved in it. But then that does make you appreciate other people's challenges for that exact same reason.
Yeah, totally. And you also can't spend the whole school holidays going out on expensive excursions every day. There's a lot of sitting around and doing very boring stuff, but kind of just relaxing and being quiet and kids not, being in that better zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you got a list of like landscape builders who you've always been recommending to, or how did you start relationships with them?
One of the guys we work with, who runs a very small business, we studied together at Burnley. So we've been working together for, close to 20 years. Other people I've met along the way, sometimes the clients have someone who they want to use. I suppose in more recent times, maybe the last 6 to 8 years, we've been quite specific about who we would like to work with, who we prefer to work with. I think there's some designers who say, unless you're using my landscape contractor, I'm not interested in being involved. Well, we're not like that, but I do know we've been down the path, particularly with one landscape firm where things fell very wrongly apart. They ended up actually skipping the country. So it was pretty disastrous. And since then, we're very circumspect about who we work with. And basically, we work with the people we've worked with for a long time, or with a very, very strong recommendation from another colleague in the industry. But, you have to expand your field a bit, particularly, we've got a lot of work, and we know that not everything can be dealt with by the sort of 3, 4, 5 companies we work with regularly. So, I am open to looking at other people, but feeling like I really need to have an understanding of how they work, the quality of their work, but also, the respect that goes between a really strong relationship between a landscape contractor and a designer, and, dialogue, openness to discussing when things don't go right, how we're going to solve this together, not finger pointing, but also just an ability to interpret our ideas, but not create their own design interpretation. And it's a really fine balance, because I do think good ideas come from everywhere. And I often, there's often expertise that comes from someone who works in the field to say, is there a better way of doing this? Completely open to that. But ultimately ensuring the design intention is delivered is really important. So we've had relationships with some landscape contractors who sort of go off on their own bent, and you just go, okay, well, that's great, but we won't be working together again. And others where you just know each other so well now that it's very easy for them to interpret and know that they are delivering what we want. But we're very hands-on on site, and we're very involved, and we really do want to be part of delivering ultimately the design that the client's paid for, that they've put their faith in us, and we need to deliver that.
So do you have project management as part of an extra, or is that included in designs?
It's an extra, yeah. Well, we call it supervision because, I think it's supervision of design intent. It's not contract administration, for instance, which architects do. But that's very much, I would say 95% of our projects, we're involved with that supervision side of things. And the ones that we aren't, we'll often have a phone call anyhow with the contractor, because we kind of want to know that it's being delivered properly, even if the clients don't want to have our involvement because of budget, or generally it's never, well, we hope it's not because they don't want us involved. But, you can't help, it's your baby. You can't help but want to deliver it beautifully. Yeah. And ultimately so that the client does turn around and say, that was fabulous work, because you've directed it properly.
Yep. Yeah, and I find that it's come with experience, but of working with different designers. But I found that the best thing to do, if you find a design, like the client might want a design change done, or you think something needs to be done, you can contact the designer and say, like, recommend, this is what I think, this is an option we can do. What do you think? And then the designer could say, yep, that's a great idea, do that. Or they could say that's not a good idea because of X, Y, Z. So rather than just saying we've got a problem, you always want to go with the solution to the problem, and then work from there.
Which is great. And, and great minds working together. I don't know if I just said it, but sometimes the apprentice on site has got a great idea, and it doesn't matter that they're the apprentice and you're the designer. They've still got a great idea. And, we have a quite sort of flat hierarchy in our office. Like, we're all working alongside each other regardless. And I think that's really important, is that everyone can contribute. It doesn't have to be about you not having the status or the seniority or the experience, because sometimes bright ideas come out of nowhere.
Yeah. We just had put on a new apprentice recently, and in his second week, he came up with an idea. Like, so we were laying steppers and using crazy paving. And he said, should we do it like have one stepper spanning over a couple of different steps and then cutting out the gap in between? A bit hard to explain, but I'd never thought of it doing like that. And we didn't do it because you wouldn't really be able to tell because there's plants in between it, so you couldn't tell. But I was blown away that he had that idea 2 weeks in, but then the next week he said, landscaping's not for me, and he quit. So that was an idea. So I was really excited. Thinking it got someone who actually can think for themselves that early.
Yeah.
But yeah, then that did work out too well. So that was disappointing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that idea. Like everyone can have a good idea, and you want to encourage people, even if you're going to say no to their idea, just to come up with it at least.
Yeah. And to discuss it and air it. And you never know, that might lead to another idea, which is great.
Or like 4 jobs later, you might be thinking, oh, remember that idea you had about this previous job? That'll work perfectly here. So you just want to encourage as much creativity from everyone as possible, because the more ideas you've got, the better it is.
Yeah. And I think that whole notion of respect across all people you work with is really important, and it just engenders such a positive response on site. Acknowledging people, saying hello, making them part of the process. Obviously, not wasting time having a chat through it, when you're needing to get on with work. But sometimes those chats are really valuable, and sometimes the fact that, the person who's digging the trenches is someone just as worthwhile as the site manager or the head of the landscape company.
Yeah, morale helps on site as well. So those chats can, even though there's not much value in it specifically, in a grander scheme of things, that does help people's minds. There's a project that you designed. Actually, before I move on to that one, so do you do any planting, like plant placement, as part of the project as well?
Yes, Joel, absolutely. I mean, that's the sort of the finishing touches that we think are really important. And while our gardens are designed and have, key hard landscaping elements and structure in there, the plants are what finishes it. And a garden without plants to us and to me is not a garden. So first of all, plant selection is really important when we're designing, but also then the procurement of plants. We source most of the plants from our projects because we're very keen to get the right cultivars, the right species, but also the right specimens that have been brought up through their growth through the nurseries, and that they're going to perform well. So we do that, and then we get on site and we do all the placement, because ultimately, no matter how detailed the plan is, and it will be, 5 of these here and 7 of those there and that feature tree over there, you get on site and there's tweaking, and there's the way you arrange the tree and the branches, and the one that looks like it's going to grow out over the path, well, we turn it the other way, and making sure that, we don't have the back of the tree facing the front. That's a key part of our projects, and we will go back and tweak, and we will unfortunately ask the guys on site to lift a 200-litre pot out of the hole when it's been watered in, and it's like taking gumboots out of mud, and say, can you please move it? And, they may growl and grunt and bitch behind my back, but ultimately it's about that attention to care. And I think also afterwards they go, well, it's really interesting what Kate does, and she's so specific, but then we see the ultimate result, and they understand it, which is great.
Yeah, we've had that happen as well, where we've had to make really minute changes, but then you realise that looks awesome the way it's been done. So it's like might be a half an hour effort for a 50-year benefit.
Yeah,
of having that tree in the right spot.
Yeah. And look, we're very much into a naturalistic style. So when we're planting out groups of plants, it's all about them being lacking in regular spacing. So I hate sort of a grid or a line. It's always about tweaking them this way or that, because that's how they appear in nature. I do remember one project where the clients had their teenage son plant some of the project, and they proudly took me out the back, and there was this precision perfect grid of plants, and oh my God, I just wanted to be sick. And what can you say? Because they've done it, they think it looks great, and the child's so proud of themselves. So you're like, great, yeah. Hopefully in time it'll grow together and you won't notice it.
Yeah. There's one project you've done recently which blows me away, with some curved cobble paving.
Yes.
Where'd the idea from that come from?
Joel, it's really interesting, actually. Initially, it came from a little Japanese courtyard book, which had this lovely undulating pavement, but quite low undulations. And as we were building it, it's been an interesting challenge. Lots of people, I'm sure, there's a few comments on Instagram about how you built it. But once we built it and I posted it, my sister sent me a message saying familiar. And I went, what? And then I went, oh my God, I can't believe this. My front garden, as we were growing up, my dad was an architect. We had this 70s garden in front of a Victorian double-story terrace. And we had an entry path that was like that. Like literally you were going between these big brick mounds that like wove. So somewhere subliminally, that sat there. And I mean, it's so familiar with me, but I hadn't thought about it till then. So I actually haven't told the landscapers yet because I think they'll just go, what? We asked you for more reference shots. Why didn't you give us that one? Because it's actually in a book, a very old Reader's Digest landscape book. And so when I remember what my sister said, I showed the staff in the office. I went, look at this. And they all went, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's different because it's brick laid on end. But it's, where does that come from? I mean, I do say with design, there's nothing new under the sun. We are all reinterpreting. We're all taking inspiration from around us. It's not like we're copying, but you're manipulating ideas. Yep. You're looking at colours, you're looking at shapes, you're looking at how people have done things in the past and contemporary. And I think, we're very influenced by what's around us. But that one was a doozy because I really had not thought about it when we first discussed it, and Daisy and I were working on it. And anyhow.
And so I'm also, because I'm fascinated to see how it was built as well. So because you've got some plants coming up out of it. So did you put like tubes down so that
trade secret?
Okay. Because I imagine that would have been interesting to free-form the concrete anyway.
We spent a long time thinking about it. We had documented it in a certain way, and we did spend a long time thinking about it. And that's the reason why I say trade secret, is that Form Landscaping did do a lot of work in making it work. What was interesting about that site was that the back of that house had been opened out to that back corner, which was, it had a paving slab there already that we couldn't remove, and a very tall wall beside it that we couldn't remove. So it was a very tight corner, but it allowed north light to come into a kitchen window. So there were very limited opportunities with what we could do there. Building over a slab, being against the house, we couldn't have any water coming into the house. So it was very much like, well, do you just pave it and put pots there? Very boring. So it was really lovely to see it develop, and it has been at the end of a long project, and we've all been waiting for this bit to be built.
Yep.
But it's tricky. It's tricky. Everything had to drain properly, stay away from the house. It is trafficable for maintenance. But so it is, it's got solidity to it, but it also had to have planting nooks and irrigation and drainage and all fall properly. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Well, the client thinks it's a piece of art. She's very happy. Yep.
Yep. 100%. There's a lot of things that landscapers design and build that is literally art that they do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, and I think it's very hard sometimes when clients look at quotes or they wonder why there's cost involved. That always had a huge allowance of time, that section, because we knew that it was going to be time consuming. But I'm really glad how it's worked out. I can't wait to see when it starts to grow a bit, because it's never meant to be covered in plants. Just the idea is that there's these ephemeral pockets of interest, and then there's a beautiful rendered wall behind it where plants will go up the wall, but again, not mass coverage, just green spots.
Yep. Did you ever get stuck with motivation? Like, where do you get your inspiration from for? So not motivation, but your inspiration for design and ideas to come up with.
I think because there's 5 of us in the office, that helps, because we do cross-pollinate, and we're constantly sending images to each other about things we see. We've got a little share thing on Instagram that just sends it to the whole team. I like travelling and traveling is a big inspiration for me. So last year we went to England and Puglia. And England, I think in the 10 days we were there, we went to 10 gardens. And Puglia was not visits to gardens, but observations of landscape, which was just fabulous. That's a really different part of Italy that I hadn't been to before, very stark. And in fact, they've got a horrible olive disease there, and it's slowly killing all the olive groves all the way up from the tip of Italy. And it's a lot to do with farms and olive groves being abandoned. And when they're abandoned, this has been allowed to run rampant and not stopped. It's devastating. So you drive past, kilometres and kilometres and kilometres of dying olive groves. And when you think about the kind of hunt for the beautiful ancient olives that we have in Australia, you can't believe this is happening. So, yeah, I mean, that's not particularly inspiring, but it's also a reminder of what we've got to do to maintain that's not a natural landscape, but it is. It's a cultural landscape. And in England, seeing fabulous gardens, different ways of arranging plants, beautiful paving materials, fences, structures. I think all of that is exciting. And the other thing is going to the landscape conference, the Australian Landscape Conference that's in Melbourne every second year. So it was in March of this year. Did you go, Joel?
No, I think it was around the
it's the same time as the garden show, exactly, yeah. Which is kind of like, I can see why they've done that, but at the same time, it does make it difficult for anyone taking part in the show.
Yeah.
So that's always inspiring because there's, half a dozen overseas visitors, half a dozen Australian presenters giving you a different perspective. Increasingly they're talking about land management, they're talking about Indigenous land management, they're talking about global warming as very much as a key topic. So it's not just pretty gardens, it's actually a broader overview. And I think that's been incredibly inspiring for all of us. And, you don't want to always be doing the same thing. And with our company, it's always been about, the right garden for the setting, the right garden for that architecture, the right garden for that client, and for that, microclimate there. And so we don't want to have a situation where we're producing the same thing again and again. And of course, there will be elements that you see repeated. We tend to curves, but we also have very strong relationships with the architecture and about axial views and about opportunities to, look out of windows and have transition zones outwards. But also, yeah, every project's different. We do a bit of work down on the peninsula. We do work in the inner city. We've got projects north of Melbourne in the Macedon Ranges, down Gippsland, down at Barwon Heads. All of those have different situations and you have to adapt to those situations. And you can't be using bluestone paving in Sorrento or in Barwon Heads. It just doesn't work. It's not a sense of place. So everything, yeah, all of those settings inspire you as well. Natural settings, going out, we're going out to WA in September and I can't wait to see the wildflowers and see the natural setting there. And I just love that idea. I mean, nature always does it better than us, I have to say. So you look to nature and you see, whether it's a windswept tree or whether it's a swathe of one plant going right through another swathe of another. It's a beautiful thing to just get the brain whirring.
Yeah, nature's got a bit more experience.
Exactly. And we've got to be aware of nature because, we can't keep on designing gardens that are water hungry and maintenance heavy. And, I struggle with very, very advanced trees because I feel like the amount of effort to make sure that lives before, however many years it is before it actually starts growing. I mean, it has to put out roots before it puts out branches. That concerns me, those sort of decisions, because I feel like the potential for loss is so high, and we should be working with trees that are more manageable, that will settle in more quickly, that will do the job for the client ultimately better with less intervention.
Yeah, the plants, there's no doubt that smaller plants grow better in those situations because they spend more of their life in that situation.
Yeah.
It's just no one's got any patience for waiting for that.
no, exactly.
Me
But,
included.
but putting in a 2.5, 3.5 metre tree already gives you a bit of substance. It's not like everything is a 0.5 metre tall and you really are sitting in, tube stock city. And we like, when we're working with some of the lower mounding plants, we like to get a plant that's got a bit of substance rather than just a twig. But I do think, it's a really careful balancing act we have to walk, because, you get a beautiful tree that's 60 years old that gets transplanted that fails after 2 years. Oh my God, it's devastating. All that time that tree has spent growing and creating oxygen and, being a vibrant part of the environment, and then we kill it.
Yeah. So what's the future look like for your business? You're planning on staying as you are and just continuing to produce beautiful gardens?
At 5 in the office, I think that's enough people for me personally. Yeah. I don't want to get bigger than that. I still like the fact that I know every job. And while my, fabulous designers and architects are working individually on their projects, I'm still very much involved in each of them. And I think going over that size, you start to get removed from it, and also you become an administrator. And the last thing, which I think is the most important, is that you start having to take on jobs that you don't want to take on because you've got to feed the beast. So, we're in a good position at the moment where we've got beautiful work with really lovely clients in great settings. And ultimately, you hope that you make the right right decision when you and the client decide that you want to be involved in a design relationship. It's so important that is right from the start. And I always say that when I first meet clients, and and before you've written the proposal, I say, I won't be offended if this doesn't feel right for you, because you're going to have a long relationship with us. You're going to, it's going to be at least months, if not years. If you don't feel like I'm talking the same language, or we're not seeing eye to eye, or you don't feel you're being heard, it's not the right decision for you. Also, life's too short. You want to work on stuff that you're inspired by, that you like working with people, that they're appreciative and you're appreciative of them. And it's you don't have to be friends. You don't have to be seeing them for the rest of your life. But I do have a few clients who have become friends, and I do have clients who've come back to us a second or third time. And I think that's a fantastic legacy that says, they've really enjoyed the process as well as the actual the design result, because it's not just the design, it's about how we work together.
Yep. Yeah, I did a talk at, I think it was the Melbourne Home Show, but I was talking about the importance of choosing a designer who you get along well with, because you want to be able to talk to them. And if you're not happy with something, you want to feel comfortable that you can talk to them and say, I don't like what's happening over here. And then they say, oh, no worries, that's fine. But if you don't get along well with them, you're either not going to say it or they'll just sort of ignore you. So it's an important relationship with a designer.
Yeah. And just, I think, you do meet people who say, oh, the designer wanted us to do this, but I wasn't really sure. And you go, but it's your house or your garden. Like, seriously. Well, we have to, as designers, we want to push our clients to do something that they weren't necessarily thinking about or are inspired by. At the same time, if what they want is, X or Y, and it works within what we're designing for them, then we should be giving them that. But, I can't say to a client who's, on a windy coastal cliff, yes, you can plant your roses, because we know they're not going to work, But you say, well, okay, can we find a sheltered place for your roses? Or can we give you something that gives you the same effect as roses? Do you want something with a scent, or do you want something with colour? Or so it's that sort of thing. Yeah, there's some things where obviously you don't want to compromise because you're not doing the best job for them. If you're not giving them good professional guidance, then why are they engaging you?
Yep. Yeah, I'm big on that as well. Like, it's important to give them the right information because you're experienced and the right answers for everything. But at the end of the day, it's their house and you don't live there. So if they want something and they're not, and you're giving them all the information and they still want it, then it's a case of
Yeah, absolutely. As long as there's a proviso, I want marble around my pool. Actually, that's going to be really slippery. No, I really want marble around your pool. I have to tell you, and I'm going to write it on an email.
Yep.
We do not recommend this.
Yeah. Do you ever have to knock any projects back? Is they're not your style?
Yes. Yeah. And it's a difficult thing because you want to be courteous about it and you don't want to offend anyone. And sometimes it is really to do with we've got enough on that this project will push us beyond our comfort level, or you don't feel the relationship with the clients is going to work, or what they want to do for that property isn't going to be enough to make the difference that needs to be made. And so, there are times, reasonably regularly where we say, look, thanks, but no thanks. And I think gut instinct is a very powerful thing.
100%, yeah. Couldn't agree more with that.
You get a sense, and I'm pretty good on it, first meeting, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to waste people's time and money and ours. I don't want to be doing something that each night we're up going, how in the hell are we going to make this work? And it's really unpleasant and they're not nice people.
Yeah. You could think, it's going to feel awkward having to, knock them back and say no. But I guarantee you what's going to feel a lot worse is taking that job on and then all the nightmares that are going to come up from it because you're going to be a problem to start with.
Yeah. So, and that's what I say also, to the students is, I know it's very hard when you're starting out and you want to get every job, but you also got to, sometimes you've got that antenna that says no, 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 no. And that is the job that, you're going to lose money on, you're going to bend over backwards, they still won't be happy. And, it's time wasted and never recovered. So you've got to follow your instinct.
And last question for you, Kate, is who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Oh. Okay, so are we going away from designers or are we...
anyone you like.
Okay, so Jodie O'Toole. Do you know Jodie? She's a plant broker.
Yeah, she was on the Australian Garden podcast, which is a new podcast, and I think she was a second or third guest.
Okay, all right.
She was good to listen to. So
she's a very talkative and knowledgeable person.
Yeah.
In the same vein, Chris England at Merrywood Plants.
Oh, yep.
Yep. And design-wise, I thought maybe Fran Hale from Peachy Green. Have you spoken to Fran?
I have. I messaged her. I'm pretty sure still, she's a maybe.
Yeah, okay.
So this will tip her over the edge.
She's doing beautiful work. She's an interesting person to talk to. And I think she has a very interesting, she's very clever with business. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on and recommending those people, Kate, and sharing your story. I absolutely loved it. And I've got no doubt other people will as well. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Joel. And very appreciative of the opportunity to have a chat. So thanks.